Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to the Effort of Community Church weekly podcast, a conversation with our pastors and leaders meant to continue encouraging you to know God, know freedom, know purpose, and make a difference.
Hey Effort of Community Church, great to be with you on this week after graduation. Man, I have Oliver Denlinger, our pastor over student ministries. He and Carly are our co-pastors in that area. Sorry about that, Carly.
Classic mix-up.
I'm Jim Ehrman, executive pastor of Advancement here. Just love what we get to do. But man, I was able to be the service pastor for this last week, and that's the term we use for our pastor that helps steward the transitions. And what a fun week to be a part of that, because of just, first of all, experimenting with a fun format for the service. Thanks for having the vision for that, Oliver. Mm-hmm. So I want to chat a little bit about what we saw took place. We do believe in these marker moments, I like to call them. Some people call them rites of passages, where we bless those who have committed themselves to something like high school or college or different of society's formational places, like schools and ministries, etc. And we bless and we commission and we say, well done. It was so good to celebrate these young people, man. Any thoughts on that front?
Yeah. No, it really was. I mean, it's sometimes you don't, when you're journeying with people and discipling a group, you're walking with them, and I think a lot of times you don't realize, man, they're picking some of these things up, and it's only in moments and times like that graduation weekend video piece that we pulled together, where they are testifying, hey, this is how God has really impacted my life as I look back over the last 4 years or 6 years for some of them. Yeah. So that was so fun just to see that kind of come to a place of culmination in some ways, where we could celebrate, hey, this is a milestone, it's a marker. That's right. But we're going to send you forth.
Well, let me just speak into it as someone who pays attention to discipleship, not only what our outcome goals are, but how we go about doing it. I just want to commend something I saw, because a lot of people would hold as the high watermark of youth ministry, how do we keep them from becoming too much like the world or keep them from sin? Sure. And I have to tell you, man, as much as I know we hold like that moral compass stuff as an incredibly deep value here, I just want to say that the power I saw in prayer in them, how to frame the challenge in prayer, how to approach the challenge in prayer, how to do it as a people, how to apply faith to a situation. I have to tell you, I was sitting there blessed as a discipler, that I'm looking at young people who know how to pray, actually just led a community in prayer. And man, that spiritual discipline in a young person, remember, there could have been others we went after, and it's not like we don't around evangelism or service. Totally. I mean, we do all these things, right? Right. But I have rarely seen a group of young people that knew something about the spirit of prayer like I saw yesterday. And I want to commend, first of all, I just got to start by saying thank you to you and Carly. I think that's an emphasis you put on it. I was talking to Chris Weber, because I was congratulating him, going, Chris, well done, because you sowed a lot into that group through the years as the previous student ministry pastor. And he goes, you know what? That is something that Oliver and Carly brought. So first of all, I just want to commend you. Well done. Yeah. Those young people had a spirit of prayer on them like I've rarely seen in young people. Yeah. Well done.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. I think one of the most rewarding parts for me was, I mean, like you mentioned, seeing them lead the congregation through prayer. But then even just their confidence, their transparency, their vulnerability to testify, as they were kind of framing the prayers with prophetic words from the past, some dating back 3 decades. But seeing their own story woven into the fulfillment of those words in a bit of a microcosm way of like, hey, here's one example, my life story of how this prophetic word is being fulfilled right now. Exactly right. And so being able to put that on display was I thought that was amazing.
Beautifully done, where we honored these historic words, and I think I noted it in both services. Some of them go back 30, 35 years that we've been praying into and believing for. And I even like to use like the biblical covenant of like Abram. You have this Abraham receiving this promise, but the real story is I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the working out generationally and through different people. And I saw the youth holding on to a promise from, quite honestly, a previous generation, as fast as generations move right now, right? And still continuing to believe for it. And to say, I'm part of this story. When the huge breakthrough happens, doesn't really matter. What at the moment is, I joined this story of this promise that was given to us a while ago. And as you know, I want a bigger withdrawal. I think we've had, you've heard me say at the beginning, we've had what I call a sustainability withdrawal on that promise. I want an investment, a strategic investment
Yep.
a call on God for some of that bank account of the last 30 years. But I just want to say I love the testimonies reminding us God's about little known unnamed nobodies who are just obedient to the thing they heard, and then he does something amazing through it. So
so true.
Powerful.
So powerful. Yeah. I think one of the other pieces too that was fun to see was, if you didn't see this analogy or this illustration that I used from the platform, kind of teeing up the prayer time, I had a baton, right? And so I shared a story Saturday night for those who are watching Sunday. Well, we only live stream Sunday, but if you didn't catch it Sunday, I wanted to just tease this out a little bit more. That baton just represented a story that I recently heard from a leader who was kind of navigating transition through a church, and it was generational, kind of the upper generation passing it down to the next generation. And when the next generation got the baton in leadership, they turned around and said, "Hey, I want your hand on this baton as well." Sure. Because there are foundations that you have laid that I'm standing on, and we're going forth from here. But I want this to be a joint effort, and I want your hand on the baton as well. And so that's kind of what I was attempting to draw the family into was, hey, let's all have this baton, and there's honor for the previous generations that have really walked forward in faithfulness, sowing seeds into the ground in faith, believing for this promise. But we're believing for much more as we work together. And just trying to frame that, the multi-generational teamwork. So Jim, do you want to share your heart a little bit on that?
It's a big deal for me at this moment because I was just at the Croatia Summit for Harvest Net International, and a little surprised that the topic was around empowerment for evangelism. But it's really fascinating as we looked at the different speakers and where the Spirit took things. It was towards how God was going to be using a multi-generational approach. And the question then became how to be spiritual mothers and fathers and sons and daughters. And it wasn't just how to be spiritual mothers and fathers as if it's a one-way thing. It was actually, no, the Spirit that set on the place was how to be spiritual fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters. How to both have your hand on that baton, right? And to be able to say, man, God is doing something together. And one young man got up, when I say young, maybe 30, 35, and he said this, it dawned on him at some point, if every generation begins rebuilding the house of the Lord, the house of the Lord will never be complete. If I'm not able to build on what the Lord has been doing in the previous generation, saying yes to it, knowing what it was, he says, we will never have a complete house if every generation restarts the house. And man, I don't know why, it just seemed so easy way to say it, but it struck me as, my goodness, whose am I building on? And if I'm not, how can I expect that someone's going to build on Jim Ehrman's work, right? Wow. So I will have to tell you to look what I could see it in the eyes, and the baton analogy brings it home. This generation just doesn't want to take it and run.
Correct.
They're like, man, hold a second. Can we pause enough to reflect on what it means for both of us to have our hand on this baton of what God's doing right now so that we can build on each other's things? And, it's all over the Bible, isn't it? I love what it even says about Joshua. And Joshua fulfilled the vision given to Moses, fulfilled what the Lord spoke to Moses. And it's I'm like, Lord, let that be that we are in that kind of relationship. Anyway, you can get me pretty pumped about multi-generational ministry. Now, I know a lot of people talk about it. We have to figure out how to actually do it. It is such a fun concept. But man, it takes intentionality, and it's bumpy a little bit. It can get bumpy, but we can believe for it. Now, I just want to give you some time. I know how it is when you're up front and you're coordinating what the core message is for the weekend. Like, you don't have time to do everything. Like, if you could have hit more on any one point you already hit or add another one, anything you would have done differently or added?
Yeah. I think I kind of hit on this a little earlier just here in this podcast session, but just really reviewing and celebrating the faithfulness of God in this region, what he's spoken. Like we said, dating 30 years ago was that original word from Ken Kime, who at that time was a member here at ECC, was on a youth retreat. Yeah, they had youth retreats back then that were, slightly almost as epic as our current Encounter youth retreats. But shared a really just phenomenal word about these youth being, so grounded and secure in their identity, filled with hope for the future. To a generation that many are calling hopeless and dead. God is calling you alive, and you have a purpose. And so anyway, that God speaks a prophetic word into a space for that time, but I think that's also a seed that bears fruit and grows into a tree if you really want it, I think there is an ability to hang on to those things. So anyway, that's what we've been as a student ministry team. We've kind of been looking back through the archives over the past few months and just understanding, as Carly and I are kind of fresh in this new leadership position. Brianna Lapp, our Encounter 5-6 director, and Kylie, it's a newer team. And so we're just looking back over our shoulder and just pausing a little bit before we get too excited about vision moving forward. Yeah. Like, what has the Lord been speaking over the past 3 decades and beyond over this house, over this people? That's right. And then looking to, okay, in light of that, how do we point our cannons forward to be in alignment with the purposes of God? So anyway, I think I would have loved to have a little bit more time to tease it out, just the faithfulness of God over the years and just how he's so faithful, in the midst of our own weaknesses and our own, shortcomings. God his hand is faithful, and he just continues to lead forth with such kindness.
Let's unpack it for just a couple of minutes. Like, the Lord is faithful to the words he's spoken, but we have to remember the words he's spoken are about people he loves, right? I mean, if it was just about the Lord accomplishing his word or his mandate, that would be done deal, right? But he longs to do it with people, and I do want to say something about this generation. And it's not even as much a critique of the past generation, to evaluate isn't always to critique, it's just to evaluate. Right. This generation has something about, once it receives its own breakthrough, it then desires to turn it and give it away. So in other words, it's almost a communal breakthrough for them. Like, even if one of them is the tip of the spear for getting something, they've got to turn around, I've noticed, and be like, friend, we can do this, everyone. So there is something about their community way of doing life, communitarian, that's slightly different than the rugged individualism that North America has been known for the last 200 years. So at one level, whatever we think about this generation and how it engages or how it learns or does things, there is something about it when it gets something, it wants everyone around them to get it. And it's not just to reinforce their own kind of survival of the group. It's like, no, it's immediately we get it to give it. And it was all over the ones even yesterday that we're sharing, and you could just sense, I've been around the youth in a lot of different ways and just witnessing what I did this weekend. But I would have to say, man, they get it and they give it away, and God honors that. And it gets me pretty pumped. Kevin put it this way when we were Pastor Kevin said it when we were in Croatia. He goes, I believe we're harvesting the greatest harvesting generation ever. And I'm like, dude, slow that down. We are currently harvesting the greatest harvesting generation. And so that's another reason why as someone who cares about multi-generational leadership, more than ever, not just to pour into them because they're the next generation, but they have something on them that we want to see manifest more and more fully. So it gets me pretty pumped. What do you think, man? You get closing thoughts before we talk a little bit. I want to hear a little bit about upcoming youth trips this summer, stuff like that, but any closing thoughts, or do you want to dive straight into that?
No, I think my one closing thought was just, for any of the youth that are watching this podcast, just want to say thank you so much for being there, for contending, for the various youth that were involved in the service. It was great to see your support and just that camaraderie. I mean, I think you're really hitting on that, but I see it all over them as, when one steps forward to lead forth or to be the tip of the spear, there's an immediate kind of groundswell behind them of support, encouragement. We're right there with you, which is beautiful. It just really is. So anyway, thank you, seniors, graduates. We love you. We really do. We're excited to see you go further and faster than any of us, ever have.
Dude, you can have my job as soon as you want it. And you don't even have to be ready for it. God will fill you for it. But I just let you know, man, that's how much we want to see you come up. This verse came out during pre-service prayer, and I want to read it, Psalm 8, Psalm of David. It says this, Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You have set your glory in the heavens. Through the praise of children and the young, you have established a stronghold against your enemies to silence the foe and the avenger. And I love that here's David talking about, Lord, how majestic your name is. And you know how you shut down the enemy? The children and the young declare who you are.
That's right.
And it has ability to the spiritual warfare that I think was even accomplished through the prayers of our people. For our young people, because they weren't just praying for themselves and their generation. They were praying for something that would release and would affect this church. I think we're going to see some breakthroughs, man.
Yeah. I like
agree.
It's powerful.
Now, hey, man, continue to pray if you would for our young people. And for real, we're going to make sure that somehow we get posted the 6 prayer points that took place over the weekend. We'll be working to get them up on Instagram or attaching them to the e-news this week so that you can continue to press in and contend for what God's doing in that group. We appreciate you, and we hope you have a great week. Take care.
Hey, thanks again for joining us today. We hope that you've been encouraged by listening and that you'll join us again next week. You can listen to previous episodes, find additional resources, and of course, learn more about us at EphphathaCommunityChurch.com.